Live from London, this is Global Business.
Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Jamie Owen.
And I'm Paul Barber. Our top stories. From the free market to fossil fuels, world leaders finesse their final communique at the Group of Seven summit in Italy.
Our other headlines: China's Premier meets New Zealand business leaders on the second day of his visit, which also takes in neighbouring Australia.
Israeli jets target towns in southern Lebanon as hostilities with Hezbollah escalate.
And an historic shift in South African politics. The ANC and pro-business Democratic Alliance agree to govern together as a coalition. The leaders of the world's richest countries have spent their final day of the Group of Seven summit in Italy wrangling over the wording of a much-anticipated final communique.
The draft statement focuses on the challenges of climate change and artificial intelligence, while the issue of abortion exposed a rift between host Giorgia Meloni of Italy and France's Emmanuel Macron.
G7 leaders also discussed how to further hinder Russia's military ambitions in Ukraine by sanctioning Chinese financial institutions it claims assist Moscow. China denies selling weapons that end up on the battlefield and says other products it exports are done so in accordance with international law.
Our correspondent Giles Gibson is in Italy for us now. Giles, what were the main issues the leaders had to tackle on this final day?
Well, Paul, if the focus of the first day of the summit was the war in Ukraine, then I certainly think that economic policy, and in particular trade policy with China, has really dominated the second day of this summit. We are still waiting for the final joint statement when this meeting wraps up in just a couple of hours' time. But we have had some draft statements leaked to various news agencies, including some pretty tough language on China. The G7 saying that they're not trying to stop China's economic development, but that they are going to continue to take actions to protect our businesses from unfair practices and also to level the playing field. The context of all of this being that both the US government and the European Commission in Brussels just before this summit announced that they were putting fresh tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles entering into their markets. The US tariffs significantly higher than those provisional tariffs imposed by the European Union. China, in response to those tariffs, has once again accused both the US government and the European Union of, quotes, protectionism. And as for this kind of wider position of the G7 that we've seen talked about for some time now, this sense that China's industrial overcapacity, as they describe it, is undermining markets in the West, including the US and the UK and other countries who are part of the G7. Beijing has consistently said that those claims by the G7 are being exaggerated.
And Giles, artificial intelligence governance, clearly a major topic. Talks on that have wrapped up. What came out of it?
Well, guys, I thought just to have a bit of an experiment, I would put into ChatGPT on my phone the question, what does Pope Francis think about artificial intelligence? Because the Pope was really one of the lead voices in the session on AI that we've seen, and it says Pope Francis has expressed cautious optimism about AI and that he also emphasizes the need for ethical considerations and responsible use of AI. And that answer is actually pretty bang on, to be honest, pretty accurate, because we saw the Pope talking about how AI is an epochal transformation for mankind, that humanity should not be doomed to depend on the choices of machines. So highly cautious notes from Pope Francis in his speech, but he did also talk about how it could be a force for good in things like education. So I suppose in one sense there, ChatGPT perhaps replacing me a little bit in my job here today.
You are irreplaceable, Giles. Giles, thanks very much indeed. That's Giles Gibson, our correspondent, with a little help from ChatGPT in southern Italy.
China's Premier Li Qiang has met New Zealand business leaders on the second day of his tour of the region, which also takes in neighbouring Australia. China is New Zealand's largest trading partner and sees itself as key to the government's plan to boost exports. Our correspondent Owen Poland reports now from Auckland.
It was a wet but warm welcome for Premier Li at Auckland's Plant and Food Research Institute, which has conducted long-standing research with China into the detection of pests and diseases that threaten New Zealand's $3 billion kiwifruit industry.
In a country like ours, when you are doing science, you always want to find external partners, and China itself is becoming a more significant contributor to science endeavours throughout the world.
And local business leaders say the challenge for New Zealand is to forge a deeper export relationship with China in high-value opportunities like green technologies and healthcare.
China doesn't stand still. It gets more competitive, it seems, by the day. And so New Zealand's offerings in food and tourism, but in these other areas, have to keep innovating and improving for that competitive marketplace.
Premier Li also joined Prime Minister Chris Luxon at a meeting of university leaders where a memorandum of understanding was announced between New Zealand's Lincoln University and the China Agricultural University to establish a world-first carbon zero farm.
This is an important initiative because reducing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing carbon sequestration on farm are very important things that we have to address in our farming systems.
One of the key announcements during Premier Li's visit has been the launch of fresh negotiations to upgrade the services component in the China-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement, which should provide a much-needed boost to sectors like tourism, technology and education. With dragon dancers providing some entertainment, New Zealand's Prime Minister hosted Premier Li at a dinner function and says the high-level visit indicates China's commitment to the bilateral relationship.
Beyond our trade links, New Zealand continues to work closely with China on some of the most significant issues facing the world today, from climate change right through to conservation.
Premier Li praised New Zealand for its leadership in agricultural technology and sustainability, and he says the two countries share a common goal for peace and stability.
Peace is precious, kindness is essential, and sincerity is paramount.
Premier Li will complete his New Zealand visit by attending an event to showcase innovation in the agricultural sector. Owen Poland, CGTN, Auckland.
Consumer associations in Europe are warning that electric vehicle prices are likely to rise if the EU goes ahead with tariffs on imported Chinese electric vehicles. European lawmakers say the policy is needed to protect competition, but some environmental groups worry it will hinder the green transition. Our correspondent Johannes Plaschberger reports.
Typical morning commute in Vienna, mostly powered by fossil fuels. Consumer groups are warning that Europe's green transition could take longer than expected, given the likely EV price hike following new EU tariffs on imports from China. Ranging between 17% to 38%, they'll be added on top of the duty already levied.
Yeah, I'm affected that I have to pay it.
So this will make it even more difficult for people like me to buy an electric car.
I think it's okay because the Chinese support the fabrication of the vehicles, and that is not good.
While some say the tariffs are needed to safeguard Europe's automotive industry, others fear that this measure will make EVs more expensive and endanger Europe's climate targets.
From the consumer's point of view, such a measure is definitely not understandable. The whole of Europe is clamouring for cheap electric cars. Now we have cheap electric cars, which are also very well received by consumers. And now we are suddenly making these EVs more expensive again.
Norway has opted not to impose the EV tariffs, and Germany is working to soften the policy, with the economy minister due to travel to Beijing for talks next week. With negotiations ongoing, there is still some room for maneuver before the tariffs are due to take effect on July 4th. Johannes Plaschberger, CGTN, Vienna.
Elon Musk has secured himself the biggest executive pay deal in United States history. Tesla shareholders have given the okay to, wait for it, a $56 billion package in a challenge to the court in Delaware, which sought to block it. Let's talk to our correspondent, John Terrett, in New York. I mean, you have to keep on rereading these figures, John. $56 billion. So anyway, he won.
I know. Yes, he did, and I spent all yesterday afternoon panicking because I was on our program yesterday and I told you then that Musk had said that shareholders had voted by a wide margin, because that's what he said and everybody was reporting that. And then I realized that they actually hadn't voted, and the meeting didn't get underway until 4 hours after this program came off the air yesterday. So I was thinking, oh my goodness me, what if we put out wrong information? Well, I should have known better, because Musk wouldn't have said that they voted by a wide margin if he hadn't canvassed a large number of them and knew it for certain. So it's 56 billion or 46 billion. We seem to get different amounts. Anyway, it's a lot of money. It's almost as much as you earn, Jamie, but not quite. And you can take it like this. The shareholders last night reapproved or approved this pay package, which stems from 2018. Okay? Now, here's the thing. The case that this revolves around is in the Chancery Court, the Court of Chancery in Delaware. And the judge there, who vacated the original $56 billion from 2018, has to sign off on this new deal by the shareholders, okay? So she's going to have to look and see, well, was there any kind of coercion, cajoling of the shareholders, which the allegation was from 2018, which led to the vacating of the original pay increase? Was there or was there not? Now, the judge will have the final say. If she approves it, well, that's all well and good, and Elon Musk gets, let's say, it's $46 billion, which, by the way, is more than he paid for Twitter, and he gets that in one stroke of a pen. If she decides that there was something a bit iffy about this time round as well, then they'll appeal it. So it'll go on for weeks and months just yet. Now, the other thing they did yesterday was they approved Tesla's move to Texas. Now, here's the thing. Tesla and many other American companies are incorporated or registered in the state of Delaware because it's one of the things that Delaware does. You don't have to go to Delaware ever in order to register your corporation in the state, which is why many companies do it. There are also corporation tax advantages as well. Well, last night the shareholders said, yes, it's okay to go ahead and reincorporate in Texas, and it'll take a while, and there are corporate tax issues there as well, advantages for Tesla there as well, and of course it already has the Gigafactory in Texas. But it's important to understand that even if they reincorporate in Texas, the case that we're talking about will stay in Delaware. Lawyers from both sides have said that that is what's going to happen. Now, the other thing to point out is that Elon Musk afterwards last night said, I love you all, when he got wind of the fact that they voted in favor. And Tesla shares this morning are down 3%, though, and they're down 29% year on year. Now, the reason they voted in favor, I think, is because they can't really do without Elon Musk. I mean, here is a man who runs SpaceX and Tesla and X. Now, of course, here's a man who's starting an AI company, which he also calls X. He's bringing on the robo-taxi against everybody at Tesla, telling him not to, in August. And he also is putting up satellites to enable the internet to go to very remote parts of the world, including Texas, I should say, and crucially places like Africa and Latin America. You can't do without a man like that, including President Donald Trump, who apparently has been courting him by telephone to get him involved in the Trump administration after November, if that happens. On stage last night, Elon Musk said, I don't know why he calls for no reason. So Elon Musk, you know, he's just one of the, I know, he's just one of the most interesting people in the world, and that is why we keep coming back to him.
I feel we really should move on at that point. Let me ask you about something else, another big finance story doing the rounds there. We all remember that sending things in the post was all the rage during the pandemic. Sending pills was the thing, of course. Yes. Now, telemedicine finds itself in the middle of a big scandal there all of these years later.
Yeah, that's right. You're quite right. If you think back to the COVID era 4 years ago, there were a number of companies that came to the fore, including Zoom, which became an absolute buzzword for video conferencing. Netflix, of course, which is a buzzword for home entertainment. And then there was telemedicine as well. And this really came to the fore because people didn't have to go out, didn't want to go out, but they could connect with their doctors on basically Zoom, as it were. And it's very popular. Well, now today, in the last 24 hours, two executives of a company which is a telehealth company have been charged with fraud by the Department of Justice. The department alleges that this company's executive were basically struggling to keep the company going, and so they took advantage of restrictions that had been eased at the time of COVID. They manipulated the system, according to the Department of Justice, by cramming in as many appointments as possible in order to make as much money as possible. They call it a conspiracy to distribute controlled drugs, and both executives deny this, of course, but they have been arrested and they do face 20 years in jail if found guilty. Now, the drug that they were allegedly distributing was Adderall, and what's interesting about this is that Adderall deals with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which a lot of people suffer from. It's an inability to focus, and Adderall allows the mind to concentrate and focus and allow you to get on with your life. What's staggering is that 18 million Americans take Adderall. 18 million, that's 5% of the population. Extraordinary, isn't it? And this has all led now, because of this collapse of this company, to a shortage of Adderall, which is badly needed. It also highlights the dangers that there are when you're not doing a face-to-face consultation, when you're not actually establishing a personal relationship with your doctor. So it's a case that will be monitored very closely.
John, thank you for that. Our correspondent John Terrett in New York.
Chinese car makers have overtaken their American rivals in sales for the first time. A new report shows Chinese brands sold 13.4 million new vehicles last year, 1.5 million more than US ones. Japanese cars, though, dominated with over 23 million sales. The surge in Chinese sales was driven by BYD and the growth of emerging markets.
The World Bank has raised its growth outlook for China by 0.3% this year to 4.8%. It says the upgrade is based on stronger external demand and domestic spending, along with resilient investment. However, it warned of challenges in production efficiency and debt problems.
The Bank of Japan is considering trimming its $5 trillion government bond purchases. The details will be revealed after its July monetary policy meeting. Meanwhile, its benchmark interest rate is unchanged, with the rate rise expected later in the year.
It's the award that no carrier wants. Worst airline in the UK for delayed flights. The unenviable title has again gone to Wizz Air. This is the third year running, by the way. Their flights were delayed by an average of 31 minutes in 2023. The low-cost airline said it had made improvements, but acknowledged there was still work to be done.
Saudi Arabia's wealth fund and the private equity firm Ardian have offered to buy 38% of London Heathrow Airport for $4.1 billion. Saudi Arabia's public infrastructure fund is taking a 15% stake, while Ardian, a French investment business spun out of AXA, will own 22%. Heathrow's biggest shareholder agreed to sell its stake in the airport after receiving the increased offer.
The International Monetary Fund has greenlit $800 million for Argentina to help drive its economic recovery, saying the country's lending program was firmly on track.
More than half of the population now live in poverty, with levels rising non-stop since a year ago and quickening since budget-slashing President Javier Milei took office. Our correspondent Joel Richards reports.
Sister Neko is on her daily rounds, delivering food to the needy in this Buenos Aires slum. This neighborhood is called Ciudad Oculta, or the Hidden City. It is home to thousands of people, and people here feel their economic hardship goes unseen by the government. At this care centre for the elderly, run by the local church, they say people are suffering an economic crisis which is getting worse by the day because of government austerity measures in place. Rampant inflation means people can go without food or medicine.
All of the government cuts were made in January, February and March, so the impact is being seen now. People can't make ends meet. They have work, but they do not make enough money to get by.
The situation facing this community is found in neighbourhoods like this across the country.
Poverty levels in Argentina are rising, according to a recent report from the Catholic University in Buenos Aires. Nearly 25 million Argentines now live under the poverty line.
The Catholic University has been measuring poverty since 2002 at its Social Debt Observatory. They found poverty has risen from 49% last December to over 55% by April.
There are issues which are to do with the current situation. There was a major devaluation which led to prices increasing, especially in food. But this is in the structural context of poverty in Argentina. In the last 20 years, levels of poverty have never been below 25%.
President Milei says his government inherited an economic situation that was veering towards the worst crisis in history. And Milei claimed his economic shock therapy is the only solution. Milei's government has been criticised in recent weeks over its social policies. It was revealed that 5,000 tonnes of food was not distributed to soup kitchens. This as poverty is rising. Social tension boiled over on Wednesday when the Senate approved Milei's economic reform package.
Argentina has Messi and Maradona as examples. When we work as a team, we were champions. The big challenge for Argentina is to work as a team, as a community.
Many people in this community are questioning how the reforms approved by Congress will benefit Argentina's most needy sectors of society. Joel Richards, CGTN, Buenos Aires.
And you are watching CGTN. Still ahead. Gaza's health ministry raises the alarm on humanitarian conditions amid a dire shortage of aid.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more...
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe. Israel says its military jets have hit towns across southern Lebanon as exchanges with Hezbollah continue.
The militant group says it's retaliating after Israeli forces killed one of its senior commanders. Some Israeli leaders are threatening an all-out war. And let's talk now to our correspondent, Jonathan Regev in Tel Aviv. Jonathan, what is Israel saying about the situation on the Lebanese border?
So as you mentioned, some Israeli leaders are threatening an all-out war, but they've been doing it for 8 months, and so far it's not happening. As it's not happening, some 90,000 Israelis living in northern border communities are away from their homes for months and months now. Some 60,000 were evacuated by the state days after the October 7th attack in southern Israel, which led to a tit-for-tat war. We can call it a war on the northern border, which began the following day on October 8th.
all of the residents of the communities that are right on the border fence were evacuated. That's some 60,000 people. Another 30,000 people living a bit further south basically evacuated themselves and went further south because those communities are also experiencing daily sirens pretty much since October 8th. And since then, Israel has been contemplating about the possibility of an all-out war, but not going there. Israel is still, at the moment, putting its main focus on the campaign in Gaza. And as far as the north is concerned, there's a very heavy military presence to make sure that anything such as October 7th is not repeated once again on the northern border. And on the offensive, Israel is striking through artillery, through the Air Force mainly, but not a major ground offensive. And we know that the residents of the northern communities, they're fed up with what is happening, and they're saying it's time for Israel to change the equation on the northern border. If anyone wants these residents to come back home, they need to feel safe and secure. At the moment, with all that is happening there, that is clearly not happening and will not happen until Israel engages in a full-on war with the Hezbollah. For the moment, that has not happened.
And turning now to the conflict with Hamas in the south, US President Joe Biden says that he does not see a ceasefire in Gaza anytime soon. Where does this leave the Israeli cabinet?
The Israeli cabinet is saying that just like President Biden said and Secretary of State Blinken beforehand, the responsibility for the fact that this agreement is not coming to fruition lays on the shoulders of Hamas. This is something that Biden said. This is something that Blinken said a few days ago when he visited Qatar. Basically, Israel, generally speaking, welcomed the proposal set out exactly 2 weeks ago by President Biden. And Hamas initially said they welcome the agreement, but then added some amendments which basically change this agreement altogether. So Israel is saying that all the responsibility for the fact that this is not happening lies on the shoulders of Hamas. As far as the cabinet that you asked, there are several ministers in the cabinet, such as far-right ministers Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. What they're basically saying is that Israel should not even agree to such a proposal set out by the United States, because it will be nothing short of a defeat for Israel. As far as they're concerned, they're quite happy to see that this deal is not coming to fruition, because this is a deal that they say Israel cannot accept.
OK, Jonathan, thank you very much for that. That's Jonathan Regev in Tel Aviv.
In Gaza, at least 20 Palestinians have been killed in the latest wave of Israeli airstrikes on the enclave. Our correspondent Akram Al-Satari reports.
The total number of people killed since the morning is 20 Palestinians, given the latest Israeli airstrikes targeting Deir al-Balah area in the Gaza Central area and targeting Rafah as well. The number of people has been increasing. At least 3 people were killed in Rafah in an airstrike that targeted some area in western Rafah. The number of people who were targeted, the number of airstrikes that have been targeting different areas in Rafah is increasing. The total number of people who were killed in the last 24 hours is at 34 people, and the bombardment, as I said, is still continuous. In a new development, Hamas military wing Izz al-Din al-Qassam published a statement on their platform on social media saying that the Israeli government is lying to its audience, and that recently, in the recent few days, 2 Israeli captives were killed because of the aerial attack that targeted some areas in Rafah, and because of that, they believe, and they have been addressing that specific statement to the Israeli audience, that their government is lying to them, and that their government wants all the captives to come back to their homes in coffins rather than coming back to their homes alive. In the meantime, the bombardment is still continuous in some parts of Deir al-Balah in the Gaza Central area and some other parts in Rafah, and the number of people who are killed and injured is still increasing.
Well, humanitarian agencies are warning of catastrophic famine for Gazans, with 9 out of 10 children lacking sufficient food for growth. James Elder is the UNICEF spokesperson, and he's currently in Gaza. James, welcome back. Good to see you. What have you seen since you arrived there?
Oh, Jamie, it's dire. To me, it's unsurprising how much worse it's got, but it's deeply unsettling. I mean, of course, every day gets worse. We're now at almost 250 days. The coping capacities physically, of course, with these relentless bombardments, and psychologically for families to move time and again to have a loved one, a brother, a sister, a mother killed, and then to be, you know, dealing with this in a tent. This week, particularly bad, if you will. I was at Al-Aqsa Hospital, Jamie, on Tuesday. It is a war zone like few I've seen. Children with, you know, missing limbs and burns on the floor. So as long as we do not have a ceasefire, we are in this horror show. And at least the last 2 days here have been 24/7 attack drones, Apache helicopters and bombings. And what that does to the psychology of a person beyond physically the immense threat is something I don't think we've seen in a long, long time.
Is it possible to understand the psychological damage, let alone the physical damage this conflict has had on the children living through it?
Not really. We're in uncharted territory. Certainly for me, coming back now again, it's the first time that, yes, there is hope. Yeah, no doubt. As women have said to me, James, I have lost my husband, I've had a child killed, I've lost my home, I've lost my ability to feed my child, as you said there on nutrition. All I have left is hope. But there are other people who have lost count of how many resolutions there have been, who I think are well aware that the actions and decisions of those who have power over this ceasefire have no connection to the suffering of people here. Jamie, on this trip, I've had more than a handful of people, particularly young people, say to me, to words to this effect, they hope a missile hits their tent, they want this over. So no, we are in uncharted territory when it comes to the trauma of girls and boys.
How much longer do you think the aid agencies can continue, and how much longer can the population there endure this?
Yeah, that second question is one that I really have been trying to understand in my own mind. The aid agencies, we will continue. As much as the United Nations has had more colleagues killed in this war than any war since the advent of the UN, but this is what colleagues do. This is the frontline support. We must at the same time be able to deliver aid. I was on a mission on Wednesday with a UNICEF truck of life-saving nutritional supplies and medicines for children. It was about a 40-kilometre round-trip journey, Jamie. It took us 13 hours. We spent 8 hours at checkpoints. In the end, that truck was denied. So getting aid is one thing, being able to deliver it is another. But in terms of the civilian population, I don't know. Child psychologists don't know. But we should fear the very worst. There is a community spirit here that rebuilds hospital. I went to NASA Hospital, Jamie. It's back up and running. There's volunteers. I've been outside dancing in the dirt with kids. It's immense. But bigger picture, for families and those people I've known and I speak to, I have long conversations, they are psychologically on a precipice.
It's easy to despair at the international bodies who one would have thought would resolve this by now. For those ordinary people listening to you and watching you, what can ordinary people around the world do, if anything, to try to help this situation?
I think the global outcry, the relentless calls for peace have been very important. I think they must continue. I don't think at any point does it make any logical, humane sense to think that the bombing of children and the killing of so many and the destruction of Gaza will bring peace to the Middle East. At the same time, that outrage, unfortunately, is being matched by an impunity here. But I do believe, I know, for example, Jamie, I know the people in Gaza are aware of that. I know it matters to them to know that even though those with decision-making power are ignoring their suffering, it matters to them that, you know, from wherever, from Beijing to Seoul from Sydney to London, these protests matter. And then, of course, there's aid agencies. UNRWA is the backbone. It needs funding. UNICEF, there is no magic pot of money. The nutritional supplies, the water, the medicines, that's about aid. So if people have that ability to fiscally support, that goes to the front lines of those people we're trying to reach.
James, good luck with your work, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us. James Elder, the UNICEF spokesperson, talking to us from Gaza. South Africa's governing African National Congress and the opposition party Democratic Alliance have signed a deal to form a unity government.
Yes, the ANC leader Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to be re-elected by lawmakers. His party lost its outright majority in last month's election. Our correspondent, René Delcarme, is in Cape Town for us now. So, René, do tell us more about this historic coalition agreement. It's historic, of course, because it's the first time that the ANC has lost its majority since the end of apartheid.
Well, yes, the ANC took a massive blow during the May 29 election. They say that they have heard the voice of the people at the ballot box this time round. They agree that they have to be more humble and start listening to the people a little more than they have been in the past 30 years. But right now, what we are witnessing is another defining moment in the history of South Africa's democracy. The Democratic Alliance and the African National Congress, who have traditionally been sworn political rivals, indeed enemies, have just signed a statement of intent agreeing to co-govern in South Africa for the sake of the people and the Republic, also to inspire political stability as well as much needed economic growth going forward. Of course, their detractors are some parties who have broken away from the ANC, such as Julius Malema's EFF and, of course, Jacob Zuma's MK party. They say that a DA-ANC alliance is a colonial government. They say that they are very disappointed in the ANC for agreeing to work together with the Democratic Party, who they claim is in the interest of white minority capital in South Africa. But by all accounts, an historic moment in South Africa with a Democratic Alliance, some other smaller parties and the African National Congress agreeing to put aside their differences in this moment for the sake of the country.
The ANC has been traditionally on the left wing of politics, while the DA are pro-business, you say, accusations of white minority interests. How will this coalition work together? How stable could it be?
It's constitutional to make this request.
Well, uncharted waters. We really don't know what's going to happen in the coming weeks. We have a very formidable opposition in the EFF and the MK party. But the DA and the ANC and some smaller parties have committed to work to ensure rapid and sustainable economic growth in South Africa. So far, the markets in South Africa have reacted positively to news of this historic government of national unity. They say that the ANC and the DA say that they will tackle the triple threat of inequality, poverty and unemployment. Of course, unemployment in South Africa well over 30% at this stage, and so a big issue in South Africa, certainly a big issue at the ballot box, which cost the ANC heavily this time round. And in a few hours, we expect to see President Cyril Ramaphosa more than likely reinstated and becoming the president of the 7th Democratic Parliament of South Africa. So a big moment here in South Africa. The African National Congress has already won votes for the Speaker of the House. Right now, the Deputy Speaker is being elected, and straight after that, we will go into the election for the President. As I say, expected to be President Cyril Ramaphosa, which investors say would inspire confidence in the stability of the country moving forward.
Yep, a big moment indeed. René, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to date there. That's René Delcarme in Cape Town.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, Saudi Arabia joins a pioneering project using digital currency to connect central banks across the world.
What do we mean when we talk about the difference?
Brazen axe.
The difference is in the detail, in the background,
Defense ministers from
the wider angle and perspective of every story, wherever the story may be. CGTN. See the difference.
We are all connected. Across borders, across continents, connected by ideas, a shared humanity. Stay connected.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with Jamie Owen and Paul Barber. Our top stories. From the free markets to fossil fuels, world leaders finesse their final communique at the Group of Seven summit in Italy.
Our other headlines: China's premier meets New Zealand business leaders on the second day of his visit to the region, which also takes in neighbouring Australia.
And an historic shift in South African politics. The ANC and pro-business Democratic Alliance agree to govern together as a coalition.
France's blue chip index has had its worst week in more than 2 years as investors weigh a potential far-right victory in the country's forthcoming elections.
Analysts say the market appears to be spooked by potential tax cuts and interventionist economic policies. The country's finance minister has warned of an economic crisis if the far right or left wins the Snap poll called by President Macron.
This will assure a return to the situation of 1981, mass unemployment, and I mean mass. When I look at the far right, I see a program that is woven with lies. So it's not better. I'm just saying to our voters, to centre-right voters, to centre-left voters, there is still a possibility of resistance.
Well, it's just over 2 weeks until French voters go to the polls in that Snap general election. Left-wing parties have launched a coalition to try to halt the surge in support for the far-right National Party, which has a healthy lead in the opinion polls. Our correspondent Ross Cullen reports.
The northern beaches of France sparkle in the early summer sunshine. This part of the country is a bright spot for the far right. But despite the wave of support for the national rally in the EU elections on June the 9th, leftist campaigners are hoping for success here once again. This region of France last had a socialist MP 12 years ago, and the left-wing are urging people to vote against both the government and the far right, and what they say are extremist immigration policies.
Every day, people who have been exiled are harassed. Every other day, the refugee camps are cleared. Their living conditions are horrible. So for me, Macron or Le Pen are the same thing, and we must fight both of them with the same force.
A short drive inland and we reach a nearby village. The weekly market is on, and as shoppers eye up the produce, the politicians eye up potential voters.
Bonjour, madame. Jordan Bardella, Premier Ministre.
The far-right national rally candidate here is Marc de Fleurion. In the previous general election in 2022, he lost out in a runoff. The national rally wants to expel more migrants and stop family reunifications, and it hopes a tough line on immigration will propel it to power.
Social expenses have skyrocketed because of immigration. Security has been lowered by the immigration streams, and the identity also of French society is under threat.
The people in Audruic have had the same centre-right Republican MP since 2017. He is running for re-election with a defiant message for extremist parties.
I will vote for whatever is good for the constituents, and I will vote against whatever is wrong for my constituents. And we'll see. My line is very clear. We have no alliance, no deal with the extremists. If they come from the far right or if they come from the far left, we have no alliance with them because we know the history of our country.
This constituency ranges from the whole of the port city of Calais to small market squares in countryside villages. It's small constituencies like these, the village of Audruic in northern France, that the National Rally really need to win if they are to gain the 200 more MPs they need to win a parliamentary majority. A far-right victory is something that the president is determined to stop, both in this general election and in the presidential vote in 3 years' time.
I do not want to give the keys to power to the far right in 2027, so I'm totally responsible for having triggered a movement of clarification. Firstly, because the French asked us to do so on June the 9th. When 50% of French people vote for the extremes, when you do not have a majority in the assembly, you cannot tell them we continue as if nothing had happened. You're not respecting them. You're not hearing them.
The first round of what has been described as an historic election will be held in just over 2 weeks. At that point, the political landscape of France for the next 5 years will start to come into focus at a national and a local level. With a mix of hopes and fears across the country that it could be painted the navy blue of the National Rally Party. Ross Cullen, CGTN, Audruic, Northern France.
Saudi Arabia has joined Project M-Bridge, a platform for cross-border payments between central banks based on digital currencies. It joins China, Thailand and the United Arab Emirates, who are already taking part.
Experts say this project could be another step towards less of the world's oil trade being done in US dollars. Our correspondent Yasser Hakim reports on the significance of Saudi Arabia's membership.
The M-Bridge project aims to facilitate cross-border payments between participating central banks and commercial banks.
M-Bridge is closely associated with the BRICS initiative, which aims to reduce reliance on the US dollar. The purpose of M-Bridge is to facilitate faster and more cost-effective trade. Additionally, M-Bridge emphasizes the importance of due diligence and transparency in its operations.
The Central Bank of Saudi Arabia is the 6th full participant of M-Bridge, joining central banks in Thailand, the UAE and China, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and the investment arm of the Bank for International Settlements. While this system is meant to operate for all kinds of commodities, in Saudi Arabia's case, the bulk would be in oil trade. Saudi Arabia is the top global exporter, and according to Chinese customs data, it is the second largest supplier to China with nearly 86 million tons of crude oil in 2023, accounting for about 15% of China's total oil imports.
This new system will facilitate trade flows and help circumvent transfer restrictions imposed by certain countries that employ strategic commodities, such as oil, as a political tool, as demonstrated in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. In the past, there have been instances where the West attempted to pressure Saudi Arabia into restricting oil trade transactions as a means of punishing Russia. However, Saudi Arabia refused to engage in using oil as a political weapon and did not accept such measures in political conflicts.
Experts also say Saudi Arabia joining the M-Bridge is another step in strengthening its ties with China.
The Saudi and Chinese central banks have entered into an agreement to conduct trade using their respective local currencies, amounting to $6 billion. This currency swap deal, along with the membership of M-Bridge, synergistically reinforces economic partnerships between the two countries, fostering closer ties and facilitating increased trade cooperation.
The impact of such a system would not only be restricted to the member states, but can be far-reaching, as more countries can seek to join this financial network in the near future. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo, Egypt.
Rich Turin is the author of Cashless, China's Digital Currency Revolution. And he told me that more countries are likely to adopt central bank digital currencies because they make cross-border transactions easier.
It's huge, and I will go as far as to say that this is the birth of what I will call the petro-yuan, or like we have the petrodollar, we're now going to have the petro-yuan from China. What you see here is a long-term plan that's going to be missed by many, and it's lots of little steps taking place very carefully. So you've got Saudi Arabia joining BRICS Plus this past September of 2023. Now you've got Saudi Arabia joining into the mBridge program, because Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa will all have central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, within the next year, I would say. India and China are obviously already in pilots and going. Russia's in pilot, and I think South Africa is pretty well along to say that within a year they'll be launched as well.
Mm-hmm. So, Rich, this really is a massive change. You talk about the petro-yuan. What do you think about the timing of this, given that the Saudi deal with the US to sell oil in dollars, the petrodollar, has lapsed? How big a vote of confidence is this in the yuan?
I don't believe in coincidences. I think that this is a clear message from Saudi Arabia to the United States that we want to do business with the world. And I think it's a strong vote of confidence for doing business with China. And why not? China and Saudi Arabia are big trading partners. We've got China now working on a new natural gas pipeline, a major project worth $1 billion-something in Saudi. There's a tremendous amount of business between Saudi Arabia and China. And the fundamental question is, why shouldn't that business be conducted in RMB? Why does it have to be in dollar? When Saudi Arabia is buying products from China and can readily use RMB and wait for it, get a better deal. So the timing is not a coincidence. It's a strong vote in favor for the yuan, and it's a clear indicator that Saudi Arabia has intention to do business with China in yuan, and we can expect more of it in the future. Expect it to be slow at first, but eventually this is going to take off.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Football fans mass in Munich as Scotland faces host Germany in the opening game of Euro 2024.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
Unprecedented scenes that we saw.
The clean-up operation is now well and truly underway.
Parts of southern Europe remain in a state of emergency.
Context gives meaning. People make history.
Far more than 1,000 people have come here today.
But authorities are still on high alert.
So now we've actually become the border on this road.
A complex world demands a comprehensive view.
But with the cleanup efforts more or less under control,
the economic impact is bound to ripple across the country.
There's plastic pollution everywhere.
Because the world today matters for your world tomorrow.
This is the living area of the crew.
The focus is firmly on future technologies.
Well, this is something completely different.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
welcome back to Global Business Europe. Scotland are hoping to cause an upset later when they face the host Germany in the opening game at Euro 2024. Munich is resounding to bagpipes and awash with beer, with pre-game hype building in the famous Marienplatz. The football tournament is expected to provide a $1 billion boost to Germany's economy, with hundreds of thousands of fans arriving from all around the world.
Here are some other numbers. Euro 2024 is expected to attract a cumulative live TV and streaming audience of 5 billion. That's the number of views, not the number of people. It could exceed Euro 2020, which attracted a cumulative audience of 5.2 billion. Well, Euro 2020, held 3 years ago due to COVID, saw increased interest in countries outside of Europe. Viewing figures in China were up 43% to 352 million compared to the 2016 tournament. Well, there's been huge demand for tickets. There were 30 million applications from around the world for the 2.7 million seats available. Unsurprisingly, most ticket applications came from the host country, Germany, making up 65%. They were followed by England, France, Spain and Austria. And outside of Europe, the top 5 countries applying for tickets were the United States, Canada, Australia, China and Mexico, with over 500,000 applications coming from these countries. Our correspondent Natalie Carney is at a fan zone in Munich.
The 2024 European Men's Football Championship kicks off here in Munich Friday evening at 9 p.m. local time under the motto, United by Football, United in the Heart of Europe. Around 66,000 people are expected at the Allianz Arena to watch the opening match between hosts Germany and visitors Scotland. But for those who don't have tickets to the arena, they can always come here to the fan zone, which is where I'm at in the city's Olympia Park. Thousands of football fans will show up here throughout the day, the evening, grab a spot on the grass and take in the many football-related events that the city has organized.
We've all come quite a way on the train, so it's been a long journey, but looks worth it so far. That looks fantastic down there with the entertainment stage, and they've also got the big screens throughout.
However, with more than 12 million people expected to watch the matches either at one of the stadiums across the country or other public viewing locations, security is top priority. Here in Munich, over 2,000 police officers are spread out across the city. There are even officers from other European countries who have been training for months, taking part in security exercises, drills, or even simulated terrorist attacks to ensure that they are properly prepared for any situation, be it terrorism, hooliganism, or even cyber attacks. Euro 2024 is also expected to bring Germany an additional 1 billion euros from all these crazy football tourists. In total, 10 German cities will host the games, with the final in the capital Berlin on July the 14th. Who's going to win tonight? Scotland! Natalie Carney for CGTN in Munich.
And finally, a 30-year-old elephant has given birth to a rare set of mixed twins in a popular tourist spot on Thailand. Caretakers at the elephant camp near Bangkok had expected to help deliver one baby. They were rather shocked when a second appeared 18 minutes later. Twin elephant births are uncommon, and mixed twins even more so.
And that's it for Global Business Europe. Thank you for watching.
Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all of the team in London, it's goodbye.